Hello, good evening, good evening. Welcome back to the studio. So you see tonight we're going to be painting another mermaid. I don't know why I'm on a mermaid kick. I seem to be, and that's fine. They're fun to paint. Living by the ocean, the seaside here, they're pretty popular. Okay, I'm getting started now with the mermaid's face. You see, I've got my little pot of flesh-toned paint there, and I'm just going to get some color on her face a little bit. I want to just put a little bit of extra in those little pockets where I think there might be a little bit of shadow on there. This won't serve as the only shadow on her face, but I just want to start to darken it up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to mix a little bit of blue-green, more on the blue side. This is cerulean blue along with viridian. And I'm going to use that for her tail section here. The actual fin on her tail. I want it to be a little bit different than the meat of her tail there, or what would be her legs if she were a person. So I'm just going to put some of this color on. And we're going to come back in a second or two and put some detailing on there. But I just want to drop on a little bit of color right now and just get that on there. As a base coat. The actual tail, or her torso tail section, is going to be green, and so I don't want those two colors to mix or run together too much. So I'm stopping basically where I want the blue to be, and that's where my green will start. I'll let them both fade together at that point. Let me just fix a little mistake there. And there we go. All right, I'm just going to blend this out, and my flesh tone keeps running into my my blue tail color, my fin color there. All right, I'm going to go back into some of this flesh tone, and now that her face is dried, I just want to leave a little bit of difference of color there between the two, but I'm going to go back and put in most of the rest of her skin now. That would be both arms and her hands. And her chest. There we go. That's a little thicker than I wanted to. Let me pull just a bit of that off. There we go. I think that looks good. All right, and underneath here, just trying to get around some of the bigger bits of hair that are there, not necessarily all of them. And her shoulder behind. There we go. All right, and I'm just gonna drop in some basic color here. It does help on this painting that I have drawn a little bit of thicker lines. You can see easily that her chin stands out. All right, I'm just dropping in a little bit of extra bit of this color where there should be a bit of shadow for her. And there we go. Oop, that ran just a bit. It was still just a bit wet. I'm going to take a little bit of that off and finish up her right arm. There it goes, right on down, and her fingers. Simple as that. All right, and her left hand. Oh, I had them back. I had them mixed up, and that's her right hand. There we go. The left is in the back. I'm going to save that little bracelet that she's got on for just a second from now. Okay, I'm mixing in just a bit of color, a little bit of brown into this, just to add a little bit of shadowing, to push it back just even a little bit further into the back of our painting. There we go. So now most of her skin is fine. She's got one section left to go. Her stomach, or the top of her torso there, where it goes into her tail. And I'm mixing up her tail color right now, and I'm using the viridian green and a sap green, or maybe in this kit it's Windsor green. And I'm going to use that for the most of her tail here. I'm just going to try to mostly stay within the lines and just block in some color. I'm going to let that just run and fade out ever so slightly where those two come together. Here we go. Just laying in the color. We're going to come back and put a little detail in just a little bit, but we just want to make sure we've got our green in there. And I'm working from the base of her tail to her waist, so that when I get to her waist, the paint is still a little bit wet, and we can mix in our flesh color there. There we go. I just want that to put a little extra water in there. I want that to just blend into almost nothing. Oops, our tail has just run a little bit. It's a little wetter than I thought it was going to be. No mind, we'll just take that off. Okay. I'm going to mix up a little bit of color, and I'm going to start on her hair here. Whoops. Her tail ran right into that tail fin again. All right. This is just a little yellow ochre and some sort of brown. I'm not exactly sure what the brown in this kit is at this point in my life. It's changed a number of times as I've used it. This is my favorite kit, and I use it quite a bit. And I've refilled that brown time and time and time again, which is why I'm not exactly sure which the brown is. I should make a chart and write it all down, then I would know for certain. There would be no question about it. Okay, I'm just dropping in a little darker color where I think there's going to be a bit of shadow. Now her tail is still a bit damp, so this is going to run just a little bit, and we want it to. We don't want it to just be a hard line or have a hard edge there. We want it to run just ever so slightly. Whoops, that ran from one bun to the other there, or whatever that would be. Okay, and you can start on the hair anywhere that you wanted to. I think the part in her hair right there is as good a place as any. And I'm going to just vary this color ever so slightly where I think I need a bit more of a highlight. I'm going to put in a little bit of my dark yellow. Everything else is going to get as our standard hair color here, and where I need a little bit darker, where I think there's a little bit of shadow, I'm going to add a little bit of my brown to it. And there we go, keeping it nice and wet. I want that all to run together right now. We'll come back in just a second and add a little bit more to it. There we go, and coming back to the top, just going to fill out the hair on the other side. Good, just following the lines that I've drawn there, just to block in some color. Very good, right up with the tip of that to make a nice point there. Just filling in everything. As we're filling in this side, there we go, the other side is drying. We might be able to come back and put in a little detail here in just a second. Let's see how it goes. A little fuller color, just putting in some darkness. There we go, following the contour of her hair, some of the lines that I've previously drawn in. There we go. Just pull that out there. All right. We need that bit of hair to look really perfect to pull off our effect. Putting in some lines, just a bit thicker paint, almost straight out of the pan. Putting in a few detail lines here and there, not too many. And there we go. Hair is just about done the way we want it. I've switched to a rigger brush so I can make a little bit more fine line on there, and I'm just going and enhancing some of the lines that I've already done. Not really, at this point, I'm not really putting in new lines. I might be extending the existing lines just ever so slightly, but for the most part, just, there we go, just either putting in the lines that were already there or enhancing those lines. All right, now let's come in and put in the rest of her torso right to that green. And we're gonna just smooth that in so we don't know exactly where her skin ends and her scales start. All right, I'm gonna put in, whoops, I'm gonna try to make the whites of her eyes just a little bit blue, just so they're not such a stark color when we go to paint her irises. Okay, I'm coming back in. I'm gonna make some more of this fin color back here. And I'm going to pick one of the lines, and for each of the lines that I've drawn on her fin, I'm going to go just underneath it and put in a little bit of paint and then blend it out until the next line. It's going to give it some wonderful shadow details in there. Just simple as that. Put it on and blend it out wherever you think it needs to be. I've chosen underneath the lines. It could have easily been on top of the lines. And that's going to give us a beautiful shadow line and some beautiful depth on her tail. Right all the way through, all of those lines. We don't necessarily have to connect them all, but we do need to put it on all of them. There we go, and where you think it needs to be just a bit darker, we can just darken it a little bit. Where you think it needs to be a little bit lighter, we're just going to blend it ever so slightly a bit more. There we go. Just where you think it's wrapping around back there, I'm going to put just a little hint of a shadow line. And we're just repeating the process here and there, darkening those lines to make it look like we've got a bit of a shadow in there. When I get to the very bottom, I flip it over and have to paint just above the bottom line. There it is, and repeat the same process. Every line that you see in there gets that treatment. If some are a little darker and some are a little lighter, that's fine. That happens. Not every groove on her tail would be the same depth. And here we go. I'm adding just a little bit to the outside of the tail. That should make it seem like it wraps over and around just ever so slightly. Give it a little bit more of a 3D look. And do the same thing just underneath. Now it totally looks three-dimensional. Doesn't look like it's sitting flat on a piece of paper. And just continuing to put in a couple of details here and a couple of details there. Before you know it, it's totally come alive for us. Now it's time to do the same thing for her fin. So here we go. Finding everything on the outside of her, just a touch of color, and then blend it in wherever I think there's a bend or a bit of a bend where I think it needs a little bit of roundness on it. I'm going to do that. Just put the color on and let it blend just ever so slightly. There we go. That's a bit of shadow just on her back right there. Good, and underside of her tail. All right. just right on around. I know that I flip my page a lot as I do this. Bear with me. It's easier to do that with that. It's easier to do this with that, with your brush straight away from you. All right. I'm going to come in and I'm going to give her some pupils, some eyes here. Just a little bit of color. I've switched to a tiny little brush. This is a 000. I need it to be just the 2 hairs there. Drawing in her eyebrows, and now I've got some red on there for her lips. Just, there's not a lot of detail there. There's just enough. Okay, let me get a little bit of color. That red was a bit brighter than I had hoped for. And there it is. We're just about done. Just a few little odds and ends to clean up. And we're just about there. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed painting it for you. If you like it, please subscribe to my channel. I'll be doing a couple paintings a week, and I would love to have you back here in the studio painting with me. If you attempt to do this one on your own, please drop me a line. Let me know how yours turns out, or better yet, post a picture in the comments and let us all see how it turns out. Here's just a few eyelashes on her to give a little bit more life to her face, and redarkening her eyes here. We are just about done. And there we go. And again, thank you for watching. I very much enjoyed having you in the studio with me tonight. There's our mermaid, all done and ready. Some nice details in her tail, on her torso, some shading up top. Looks great. I'm just going to sign this one and call it done. Thank you so much.